Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome to The World Over Live. There is a growing cultural phenomenon occurring these days in radio. A new group of channels are appearing as never before. No, it is not rock and roll stations or jazz stations, though I like those as well, but Catholic stations. To discuss the trend and the future, we are pleased to be joined by Doug Sherman of Immaculate Heart Radio, Tony Holman with Covenant Network, and Chris Williams with Queen of Peace Radio. Gentlemen, thank you for coming and joining us. I want to start, why do we need Catholic radio today? What is the urgency out there? Doug, I'll start with you.
What's the urgency? Well, as you explained, there were only 7 Catholic radio stations on the air just 4 years ago. There are 15,000 radio stations in the whole country, and about 10% of those are religious. So 1,500 or 1,600 Protestant radio stations in the country, and 4 years ago there were only 7 Catholic radio stations. So we weren't evangelizing, we weren't getting the word out, and I think that's it kind of in a nutshell, that as we grow more stations, as we start more stations, and the truth and the beauty of the Catholic faith is on the airwaves, miraculous things happen.
Tony, why do we need Catholic radio today in your opinion?
It's a great way to reach many people, to evangelize their faith, inspire people to live their faith and grow closer to Christ.
And Chris, why do you do this?
To echo what they said, but also the, we're surrounded by the secular media, which presents a certain version of their truth, which doesn't have a whole lot to do with God's truth. And then the Protestant media does a good job at what they do, but only goes so far. It's the Catholic media, it's the Catholic radio stations that bring the fullness of truth, the unbroken truth of 2,000 years into the airwaves. And once that truth gets out there, we have Protestants and Catholics and those of other faith listening, and they come into the church and they start to join the RCIAs, they start to practice their faith a little bit better. So we need Catholic radio to convert the world, convert the United States, especially the cities that we're in, back to the Church of Jesus Christ.
Now tell me for a moment, this is a great question I have. With Protestant radio so dominant in the Christian market, certainly, what is the difference between what you do and what many of the Protestant Christian networks and stations are doing?
Some of what we do is very similar, but now it's from a Catholic perspective. You know, Vatican II made a direct call to the laity. This is really an outgrowth of Vatican II, because they wrote an entire document calling on the Catholic laity to start Catholic radio stations for the purpose of evangelization. So it's following along with that.
You're fulfilling that call.
Right.
Any difference here between the two? I mean,
there's
is
a couple
some
of differences. A lot of Protestant radio stations are for profit. Some of them make very good money playing Christian music, modern Christian music and things like that. We, on the other hand, focus on a not-for-profit basis, where we're really just out there to present the truth and to catechize Catholics, fallen away Catholics, and those who hopefully will one day be into the faith. The other difference is the Catholic Church is universal, so there's one truth. Many Protestant stations will sell airtime to different local pastors. So this pastor will say one thing, and this pastor will say another thing, and this one will say a slightly different version. In the Catholic faith, that's not really the way it is. There's one universal truth, and so our message is very coherent and very uniform. When Queen of Peace was looking for something to model, some successful Catholic radio station to model, we really looked at EWTN and Mother Angelica. And her philosophy, as far as I know it, is to present the truth and to also to give it away, so to speak. In fact, most of us got involved with Catholic radio when Mother Angelica let it be known that she would give away her radio signal for nothing. And I was a dentist. Tony was in the mortgage banking business, and Doug is a builder. So none of us had any radio experience, but yet when we heard that Mother Angelica was going to do the hard part, the production of the programming, it made it easy for us to then figure out a way to get the stations and through computer programming and satellites and all that, replay the message. But so it's really not an imitation of the Protestant networks at all.
So EWTN is really the spine of your effort then, and makes it doable.
Yeah, none of this really would have been possible if EWTN weren't providing the programming to us for free. And they don't produce all of the programming themselves. They gather the best from around the country, and they send it up to satellite and leave it up there for free for us to pick up and rebroadcast.
Do you see this as a great business opportunity for Catholic people who are interested in evangelizing, or is there not much money to be made here?
No, I don't think it's really a business opportunity. It's more of a apostolic type work, too.
Tony, give me an example of what you're hearing from listeners and how they may have had their hearts changed or minds changed by listening to one of your stations.
Well, we've had people that are not Catholic listening and either in the process of becoming Catholic or thinking about becoming Catholic.
Doug, any anecdotes that stick out in your mind?
Oh, there's a good story of a man in one of the suburbs where our station plays was driving down the road one day, and a little old lady was driving in front of him, and she was going so slowly he didn't know whether to honk or pass or do what, but he got up closer and saw this bumper sticker that said Catholic Radio. He said, "Catholic Radio? I've never heard of Catholic Radio." He turned on the dial. He'd been away from the church for 35 years. He got hooked on the programming, and he's back in the church.
Any other stories, Chris?
Yeah, well, I'd like to give you one story that the Catholic Radio brings people into the church, but it also helps Catholics to live their faith more fully. We have one physician that I know of in Jacksonville, Florida, who began listening to the station and has reoriented her whole practice to now adhere to Catholic principles on artificial contraception. I've also been told by some priests that they are seeing more and more couples come in to confession, basically, having learned what the church really teaches about artificial contraception, and so they've reoriented their whole lifestyle as man and woman, and there will actually be children born because of Catholic radio in these different cities.
Very briefly, I just want to ask you all quickly this last question. What are you hearing from your listeners? What are they looking for? I'll start with you, Tony.
They're looking to learn more about their faith and be inspired to live their faith.
Doug?
I think there's been a lot of confusion in the last 30 years, and they love to hear the truth of the faith proclaimed clearly.
And Chris?
I can't say it any better than that.
Well, very good.